My name's IOStax, I'm a professional Overwatch coach, and I have a few tips up my sleeve that might help you aim. Don't miss out on any future videos by headshotting that subscribe button and join the Discord to ask questions. I want to explain to you everything I know about DPI and sensitivity that could be useful to you. First, let's answer the age-old question: low sense or high sense? The problem is that this question can't really be answered that easily. There are benefits to both. Lower sensitivities are more consistent. Small tremors and shivers aren't going to affect your aim as much. However, low sensitivities hinder mobility, requiring much larger mouse pads and lead you to suffering aim fatigue much faster. But lower sensitivities are generally more precise, especially at longer distances. Higher sensitivities get rusty a lot faster and are less consistent. However, they allow you to be much more mobile even with less desk space, and aim fatigue is much less of an issue. So you need to find a middle ground. You need to find a sensitivity that allows you to be mobile and doesn't fatigue you, but one that also allows you to precisely aim count by count at long distances. I made a video on the PSA method, which allows you to fine-tune your sensitivity after a rough initial calibration, so if you want to, you can check that out. Another question a lot of players have is relative scoped sensitivity. A lot of players don't even understand why that setting exists. Why doesn't Blizzard just make it 1:1? Well, the reason for that is field of view. Scoping in is really nothing but Blizzard reducing your field of view drastically. This is problematic, because with a field of view of 103, then the width of the screen will equal 103 degrees to turn. If someone plays at full HD, that's 1920 pixels. If we, however, reduce the field of view, the resolution doesn't really change, it's still 1920 pixels. This means that if we use the same sensitivity, the correlation between turning a certain angle in-game and how that translates to our display changes. Our sensitivity, aka the amount of movement required for a full 360-degree turn, would be the exact same no matter what FOV we have. But the correlation between what you see on screen and how your mouse movements affect that change. So let's say that your target is 5 inches to the right of your crosshair on your display. The mouse movement required to cross that distance at 103 FOV is much higher than at say 30 FOV when we are scoped in. So what we need is a relative scoped sensitivity that accounts for that. The conversion between angles turning in-game and pixels on your screen is obviously not always 1:1. That's just how geometry works. But we can try to approximate. The recommended scoped sensitivity is 38. This makes mouse movements relative to on-screen movements, not actual in-game turns, 1:1 to when you aren't scoped, but only for a small area around your crosshair. As we increase that to around 42, we will achieve 1:1 visual flick distance when looking at the edge of the screen. So that means that if you always flick to targets at the edge of your screen, you should use 42. But if you make smaller flicks and adjustments, 38 is optimal. Ideally, you want to use 38, because if you have good crosshair placement, your mouse movements are always going to be close to the center of the screen. So 38 is going to be the most accurate. I know that this sounds really complicated, but the summary is that you should set it to 38 and forget it. Let me also quickly explain the terms CM/360 and eDPI. eDPI stands for effective DPI. It is simply your DPI multiplied by your in-game sensitivity. This is used when comparing sensitivities between players of the same game quickly. CM/360, on the other hand, is used to compare sensitivities across games, as the in-game sensitivity might use a different scale depending on the game. So when you want to have the same sensitivity in game A as in game B, you first need to make sure that both games have the same FOV if possible, and then ensure that the centimeters or inches required to do a 360-degree turn are the same in both games. And lastly, let's talk about the DPI to sensitivity ratio. The idea behind this theory is to keep mouse movements consistent in and out of game. Your in-game sensitivity has no effect out of game, but your DPI does. This is problematic, because if you have a very low DPI but a high in-game sensitivity, you might only use your wrist in the game, but then have to make large swipes with your arm out of game. On the other hand, if you have a very high DPI and low sensitivity in game, you'll mainly use your wrist while on the desktop browsing the web and your entire arm in game. You want to adjust your DPI to sensitivity ratio in a way where your eDPI remains the same, but your DPI is at a place where the movements you have to make for movements on your desktop is similar to those you have to make in game. For 16:9 displays, I recommend matching the movement you have to make on the desktop to go from the left of your desktop to the right with the movement you have to make for a 180-degree turn in game, or a 360-degree turn if you mainly play close range characters, 270 degrees if you want a nice sweet spot. This is obviously a very minor thing, but for me personally, this helped me cut down on warm-up times. That's it for today's video. Make sure to subscribe so you can see the other parts of Aim Secrets and join the Discord community to become a part of something bigger. My name is Aerostux, and I'd like to thank you for learning.